I won't speak that much. I like to chant a little more, but I have to show you the chords. Got two sections, the same melody. I think you can figure it out. I'll show the first one. So that's D, A, G, A. And then I'll sing the same melody and I'll change it later. And it'll just be a progression. Yeah, we have a thought. We'll just go down. I went to China at a yoga studio and I sang this melody. And these people had never chanted Hare Krishna before. And it was like they'd been practicing for 10 years. It was amazing. It was like we were in a choir. So maybe this melody makes it sound like we've been practicing for 10 years. But, we'll try to see what Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. Very nice. It's only 7 o'clock. I wasn't really prepared to say anything. So at times like these, I really like it if you would tell me what to say. And you could either do that by suggesting a topic or asking a question. And if you don't ask, I will ask you a question. But you may not be able to answer. How does that sound? I don't like talking about something that no one's interested in, and that's why I prefer you to guide me. So I will just sit here in meditation until you wake me up. Or I can read your minds and know what you're thinking. You can ask a question. Good.
Maybe you'd like to say something or comment on the recent tragedy in New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
In Christchurch, I used to live there for a year at the Hare Krishna temple, and that mosque is sort of just down the road from
Yeah.
maybe I was listening.
Shankaraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prashani Namaste Sasamavai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Saraswati Gauranga. Well, I can tell you something. I was writing an article today, and perhaps it relates to this. It was regarding a discussion I was involved in with a group of people who couldn't come to a consensus. They each had their point of view. And generally, what I've observed in situations like that liberal people are okay to agree to disagree, and conservative people are not okay to agree to disagree. It's either this way or no other way. And liberal people are like, well, we can both kind of work it out. That tendency, I can't generalize, but the general tendency. But in this discussion, it was, this is the way, no, this is the way, no, this is, I don't know if you've ever been in a discussion like that. And the longer the discussion goes on, the more arguments are presented, the more each side is convinced of what they believed when they entered the discussion. And most people are like that. They have their beliefs and convictions long before they enter the discussion. And so each side was trying to convince one another of their idea. So I was observing it. I was obliged to be part of the discussion. And I threw in my 2 cents. And my 2 cents turned into a big discussion. And which got absolutely nowhere. It just got me more into trouble and wasting time, basically. So I kind of pulled out of the discussion and said, thank you for the discussion. I understand your perspective, and I appreciate your perspective. And I could appreciate their perspective within a particular context that they were coming from. But in the context I was coming from, it wasn't applicable. It was a different context. And what they were saying would not be appreciated or understood or accepted by people within my context, and vice versa. So as this discussion was going on, I was starting to think that we were wasting time trying to convince one another when the time should have been spent in not reconciliation, but discussing how we will coexist together with different views. I thought that would be much more valuable. Have you ever been in a discussion like that is going nowhere fast? And you sense that there is a place where both of these perspectives, but they will exist with different individuals in different contexts, and you can't force it on anybody, but people will choose their preference and live according to that. So I was meditating on that concept. And long ago, my spiritual master had instructed us, his disciples, that the fact that you have different ideas is simply because you're individuals. And that's pretty normal. As individuals, to think differently. Or to see, or to believe the same thing, but see it from a different angle. Like it's, I read the Bible, we both read the Bible day and night, you see black or I see white. So we're looking at the same thing. And according to the filters in our consciousness, for our experience, our knowledge, our context, our culture, our upbringing, there might be variations in how we see the same thing. So sometimes the question is asked, what's your truth about the truth? We read the same thing, so what's your truth about this truth? So my spiritual master said, because we're individuals, we're all going to see things differently. He said, but there's a principle called unity and diversity. And so you find a common thread to unify. In our case, with all of his disciples, we were unified around his instructions and his service. And so that was the unifying principle. But we had different ways of doing it. So he once told us this story that, I don't know if it's Aesop's Fables or what it is, but different sons are massaging the father, and they're all fighting, and they end up hurting the father because they're trying to serve him. Get out of my way. Like that. So he said, we will destroy everything if we fight on account of diversity, but we have to see the unity within the diversity, and then we can center, or we can work together, seeing that there's a common interest, although we do it differently or we see it differently. So I was meditating on that, and the more I meditate on that, the more I see that how necessary that is within organizations. Well, you can start within families and organizations and cities and communities and countries and in the world. So obviously that intolerance is a huge problem, and religions can be dangerous because there's so much emotion involved with religion, isn't it? And so much of your religion is wrong, and it's destructive, and it's going to ruin the world, and our religion will save the world. So therefore, the best thing is we just get rid of your religion, or somehow or other control it. And I have a joke. I'm not serious about this, but it's an interesting joke. I don't know if it's a joke. It's just, they say, they ask me, well, what's the solution to religious fanaticism, religious violence? I say atheism is the solution. Because if I can turn them all into atheists, they'll have nothing to fight for. Isn't it? So what are they going to fight for? Who are they going to kill over atheism? I don't have statistical proof of that because I haven't converted any terrorist into atheist and tested my theory. But I think we can understand. that. So I like my spiritual master's point, unity and diversity. We respect. I may not agree entirely, but the unity of religions is that, okay, we all believe in God, in service to God. The diversity is different ways of approaching it, different philosophies. So we respect. Maybe the respect is at a distance, but we respect. Or we can appreciate it. You want to hear a funny story? Okay, this is great. This will answer your question. Well, I don't know if it'll answer it the way you wanted it, but it's a good answer. So, once upon a time, when I was young and beautiful, I mean, more beautiful than I am now, I was dressed like this, and so a Christian lady, nice Christian lady, came up to me and asked me about my religion. So we were talking, but she was not a typical Christian. She was very, very open. So open that we're having this amazing discussion. And we're sharing ideas and going back and forth. So then this one more fanatical type Christian comes up and he's listening to us, right, talk. And because this lady was open and we could have a discussion, he thought she was one of us. And so he started arguing with her about her beliefs, not understanding that she was actually a Christian. And I was like, he was coming up, getting on my case. Then he got on her case, and I was happy he was on her case because it was really funny. And I could kind of pull out, and just watch it. So I think we understand that sometimes people don't even understand what they believe. All they understand is, you're of another religion, so you're wrong, even if you have the same belief. So I always understood that, and that was proof. I got, bird's eye view of that happening, and I thought it was quite entertaining to watch, and amusing, and interesting. And so, did I answer your question? I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm not an expert in foreign affairs and Islamophobia and all these things, but I can see it from the perspective of what I deal with in my life. And that you have the potential for this problem even with people who believe in the same thing. Not that they'll kill one another, but lots of anger and emotion and even hatred can ensue if in the hearts of some people. But, okay, I'll tell you another story. This is a beautiful story. Well, it's not a beautiful story because it's a tragic event. There was, when I was living in Texas, in America, about 30 or 40 miles from where I lived, there was a shooting in a church, similar. Maybe 10, 15 people were killed. And so the next sermon that pastor gave, he said something interesting. He wasn't blaming it so much on the person who did the killing. He was blaming it more on themselves. That we have failed to purify the hearts of people. We're Christians, we're supposed to help. And we failed, and there are people on the street who will come in and shoot us and say, that's our failure. So that's an interesting way of looking at it. That, as religious people, spiritual people, we should be able to have an effect on society. And we're failing, and therefore these things are happening. So that's an interesting perspective, to look at yourself. It's easy to blame. Okay, this guy is whatever. But what effect am I having on the world personally by my example and my life that would maybe help avert such situations? That's a thought. Yeah. Now, I have another story. Sad story with maybe a happy ending. That kind of is a sequel to what I just said. So, in America, maybe 2002, there was a shooting in a school. It was a school of Amish people. So the Amish people lived on farms, and some deranged person shot like 10 girls. 6 of them died, and then he killed himself. And then the Amish people, 3 of the parents of the 6 girls, 3 parents went to the house of the wife of that man who killed their kids and asked for forgiveness. Not asked her, told her that we forgive your husband. And they did it that evening. It was kind of amazing. And another amazing thing is they said, now you're a widow, you can live with us, we'll take care of you. So in America, there's a church called Washington Cathedral. It's like, I guess it's like Westminster Abbey of England. And so the pastor there, he talked about this soon after it happened. He said it was really amazing that they did that, number one, and it was more amazing they did it that evening. And it kind of triple amazing that it was the parents who did it, not like the head of the organization. It was the very parents whose daughters were killed. And so he was analyzing that, and he said, well, why did they do that? Or how could they do that? And what was it about him? And then he said something that I appreciated very much, and it struck me deeply as someone who practices spiritual life, because it caused me to reflect on my own life. He said, their forgiveness wasn't a decision. It was who they were as people who forgive. That's who they were. And if you are something, you don't decide, you just do it, right? Like, if you're a vegetarian and you drive by McDonald's, you don't go, should I or shouldn't I? That thought doesn't even enter. Because you're a vegetarian, you don't think about it, generally. So he made the same point. They're living what they believe, so they don't have to think about it. It's just what they naturally did. And so I was teaching a course on forgiveness, so I taught this point, but it made me think about my own life. Well, what do I believe, and then what do I live that I believe? You know, because sometimes you think you are living something you believe, but when you actually look at your life more objectively, you see, actually, I'm not living it so well. I just think I am. And I think I'm living it because I believe it. And when you believe something, sometimes you don't notice that you're not living it, because there's a cognitive dissonance, because you think you're a certain way, so you make an assumption that everything you do reflects that, when it doesn't. So that was very interesting for me. And we developed some exercises in our workshop where we asked people, what do you believe? And then we said, okay, make your list. And now after you make your list, imagine that we had your life on film for the last few months. And we sent it to people to analyze what you believe. Of course, you couldn't tell them what you believe. They would just have to see your life. And now make your list of what you think they would think you believe. And see how the left and right list looks. For some people, the right list is almost 90+% the same as the left. For some people, it's almost 90% different than the left. For some people, it's actually 100% different. What they thought they believed and how they live are completely different. So, for me, you know, when I see religious fanaticism and so forth, I always think, okay, well, I follow spiritual practice, so how true am I to what I believe? I mean, I'm not killing people, but you know, in another sense, I may be a paradox or a contradiction to my own beliefs. So when you see those things, you think, oh, what's going on? But similar things, not, of course, as violent and as horrid as that, and as terrible, but we also can be contradictions to our own values. I mean, how prejudiced are we? We have deep-seated prejudices, don't we? Right? I mean, if you ask people, if you're walking down a dark alley at midnight and you see a white man or a black man, what's your reaction? Most people will have a different, even though they have no reason to have one. But it's just ingrained socially. So, you know, these are things we can reflect on, our own prejudices. When we want to be spiritual and see people equally, we don't. Sometimes we don't treat people as well as we should, or we'd like to, or we believe we do. And you know, these are important things to reflect on. Self-improvement. I mean, one way of looking at this, my spiritual master said something. It was quite heavy. I don't know if everyone can accept this or believe it, but he said the karmic reactions of killing animals, especially killing the cows, are so severe that most of the social ills in society would be relieved if we stopped killing animals. He said that karmic reaction is creating so many problems that people don't understand how many problems it creates. And if you've never lived in India and been around cows, it's maybe hard to understand, but if you've lived around cows and studied the whole philosophy of the Vedas about cows, you can start to understand that cows they have an amazing effect. Do you know when a cow does his it has the same effect as when people chant. Did you know that? I mean, this is what the Vedas teach, that when the cow does his mooing, it changes constellations, so it makes the atmosphere benevolent. There can be malefic stars in the sky, and the mooing of the cow will change the constellations in a way that the atmosphere is purified. When my spiritual master was ill in the last days of his life, he said, bring a cow and put a cow outside my room. The cow is mother. This cow will pray for my health. Is that amazing? If you have high blood pressure, you don't need medicine, you need a cow. 15 minutes of brushing the cow will lower your blood pressure. Scientifically studied. If you have lung problems, you breathe in. When the cow breathes out, you breathe in. I mean, I take medicine. This might gross you out, but the medicine is, well, the first 3 ingredients won't gross you out. These are purebred cows that are not slaughtered. And ghee, which is clarified butter, but ghee must be made from yogurt. It's an amazing tonic. And yogurt and milk and cow dung and cow urine. That's the medicine. Yes, my wife doesn't like the odor of it when I take it. But these are medicines that have cured people of numerous diseases. And these are therapies that have been used since the days of the Vedas, coming from the cow. Isn't that interesting? Cow dung. You ever seen cow dung, anyone? Cow patties? Yeah. If you burn them, it smells good. You can make incense out of them. It keeps mosquitoes away. And people, that's what they cook with in India. And you can let cows graze in deserts and come back a little while later, it's not a desert anymore because all the cow dung fertilizes the soil. So the cow is a special animal. So the more we understand about it, the more we see that this animal was made for human beings and human beings for the animal, and how then it starts to make sense when we say that so many horrors in society are karmic reactions from killing animals, especially the cow. So karma is interesting because normally when we're looking at cause and effect, we're looking basically at what we can see, but there's subtle causes and effects. And this is one that is not easy to demonstrate unless you completely stop animal slaughter and see what happens. But subtle karma, deals with subtle causes. That's another thing to throw into the mix of violence and war and terrorism. Yes. Is that okay? Anyone else want to ask something about something? Yes.
What can we do as individuals to positively influence the world where there is violence and war and terrorism?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The chanting of this mantra or similar mantras has 2 effects. One effect is it'll purify the atmosphere. Like, let's say one day we were able to get 100,000 people in some stadium or park and to chant together for a few hours. That would change the city. Everyone would notice something has changed. The vibration is that powerful. And the Maharishi group they did some work in this area. They had a big meditation for, I think, a day or 2. Maybe 5,000 people. And then they studied the effects on the environment. And they found traffic accidents went down, disease went down. And so many things were decreased that day. So that's something we can all do if we add to the collective consciousness by adding more mantras. And I have a project called the Mantra Project, and so we encourage people, chant every day so many mantras, add to the collective number. Let's get 1 million mantras or 1 billion mantras a day in the city. Then you can watch it shift. It'll hit a threshold and things will change. That's one thing. And then chanting will change you, and when you change, you'll change people around you. There's a figure, I don't have it, I can't remember, unfortunately, but there's some figure about how many thousands of people in our life we influence. Because we influence everyone we come in touch with. So how many people do you come in touch with every day? 20, 30, 600 a month, 7,000 a year, how many years you live added up. We're influencing hundreds of thousands of people. In this room, in our lives, just in this room, millions of people are being influenced by us. Up or down, left or right, depending on our heart, our consciousness. It doesn't even have to be that we're interacting, it's just next to them. If you have the fortune to meet a very pure person, and you just get somewhat in their range, your consciousness will change. Even if they don't say anything. You will feel different. Your heart will feel different. So we're all affecting one another. It's just the way life is, good or bad. We can't avoid it. And sometimes you meet somebody and you feel good, right? You don't even talk. You don't even know them. They're just in line. They go, I feel good. Or bad, isn't it? Because it's, the thoughts have frequencies. The heart has energy. The heart has electromagnetic energy. You can measure it. So my spiritual master, when I met him, it was like, it was like heart surgery. Like everything was changing in me, like dramatically, like 180-degree change just by seeing him. So that's something to think about, that we all are influencing the mass consciousness. So, we all want the world to be better, and we all want some politician to make it better, but it doesn't really work that way, Because laws are just laws. You can't force people to follow laws. But when people change, then they naturally are better, and the world becomes better. So that's a powerful way. In fact, I even wrote a book about it. Unfortunately, I sold out of the book, and the reprinting was not ready in time to bring here. But you can get it on Kindle for only $3 US, which is about 5 Australian. And it's called Uplift Yourself, Change the World. And the subtitle is Your Growth is a Gift, and it means as you grow, you bless others. That's your blessing to the world when you grow personally, because you'll affect people positively. So uplift yourself, change the world. That's the consequence. Your growth is a gift. Your happiness is a gift. Your spiritual advancement is a gift, because it will affect people. Yes? And vice versa. So we're all little agents of change, for better or for worse. Whether we like it or not, we are affecting people. That's for sure. Yes? So, now I teach, and I've been doing this since I was 19, and I'm a little older than 19. And I will tell you how long I've been doing this. As of today, it's 49 years and 2 months. So, I started when I was 19, so you can add it up. Yeah, I decided I would stay a kid forever, but the body's getting older, but that gives me a lot of experience. And what I found in experience as a teacher, that what I teach is one thing, but what I live is much more important. And there's a story. This mother had a child who was eating sweets, and she brought him to Mahatma Gandhi and asked him, can you tell him to stop eating sweets? He said, yes, bring her back next month. Or bring him back next month. So she thought, okay, we'll do it. She didn't know why, but he agreed, so she thought, okay. So she brings him back next month and says, young man, stop eating sweets. And she said, thank you, that was really nice. But I have a question, why did you make me wait a month? He said, because when you came and spoke to me, I was eating sweets. And I had to stop eating sweets to tell him to stop eating sweets, otherwise I would be a hypocrite and it wouldn't have any power, right? So I've found in my own life that the greatest influence I can have on people is my own spiritual development, my own behavior, my own consciousness. That has much more influence. And sometimes it's subtle, and people may not realize it, but if I'm speaking about something that I'm doing, that I've realized, that I practice, I can tell from my perspective that it's affecting people more than if I say something that I don't follow. So being, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's powerful. And my spiritual master always said that. Whenever we would complain about someone, so-and-so is not doing this, so-and-so is not doing that, he would say, just do what you would like them to do. That was his answer. Just do what you would like them to do. Be the example that you want them to follow, and stop complaining about them. So that's powerful. And if more people do that, the world will get better, right? It can't not get better if people get better. How could it not get better if we all get better? And how could it get better if we all don't get better? Simple mathematics, right? So that was the idea of the book. And because I've been doing this for so long, when you practice spirituality this long, at some point you realize I have to become what I'm teaching, and you realize when am I going to become it? Am I going to die as a living paradox? So that became a big kind of an obsession for me, to try to model what it is that I believe, because I think that's the best service I can do for people, be an example. And I teach some things that are difficult to do, but if I can do them and show people that it's possible, then they get confidence they can do it also. If I can't do it, they're going to think, oh yeah, you're telling me to be humble, look at you, you're the most arrogant person I've ever met. You want me to be humble? You can't even do it. Isn't it? But if if you exhibit humility, you don't even have to talk about it, people just see it. Wow, this person is so humble. I want to be humble also. Yes? So when you exhibit these qualities, people are inspired to be that way. But just by telling them, it may do nothing unless you're living it. We do a lot of chanting, and we do a lot of personal chanting. And a lot of parents will say, how do I get my kids to chant? And I'll say, well, what do you do when you chant? You fall asleep? You go in meditation, fall asleep, or you chant and you look like you're totally zoned out and bored. And sometimes they say, yeah, and I say, well, then how are you going to get your kids to chant if you look like you're suffering when you chant? They're definitely not going to chant. They definitely go, I don't want to do that. Look at how miserable my mother looks when she chants. Isn't it? So, you have to chant, it's good for you. And say, well, I end up like you, and I chant. I'm not going to do it. So, you can't circumvent, the way things work. And the way things work is that you're an example of it, and then, likelihood that your kids will be inspired, if you're inspired. Yes?
Leading to my question, how do we encourage friends to chant or mantra meditation, or they're all watching you on social media or whatever, notice the change like you mentioned a few minutes ago, and actually my son's doing an assignment on Mahatma Gandhi, so it's sort of ironic because my son and I listen to a lot of meditation mantra at night, and he's really, I can see he's just dropping in, he's understanding. He says, Krishna does that, and I sort of explain it the best I can, just little things like that. So that's my favourite song and all that sort of stuff. So he's old enough to make decisions for himself, and so like other friends, how do you encourage? I won't say get, because that's not right. Be the example and be.
It's a difficult question for me to answer because none of my friends ever did it. I tried to encourage them, but they're all telling me, don't do it. If you do it, I'm going to stop you. You know, there are books that they can read. You know, there are articles they can read. So just read this. Just think about this. What do you think? That's important. Of course, your example is important. I think. Well, I can tell you the story of my spiritual master. So he came to New York in 1965. So he was teaching from the Bhagavad Gita, but he was the only one. There wasn't an organization. And so all these hippies were coming, and at that time, most of the people who were coming were taking LSD every week, or 2 times a week, or 7 days a week, or 14 times a week. Or, you know. It was 65 in the Lower East Side, 66. And so what happened was, because I know some of the people that were there, and they told me, that what happened was, they're all taking drugs, but they could see he was higher than they were, and they would just look at him and say, "Oh my God, he doesn't take drugs and he's higher than we are." And so they're asking him, "Well, how do you do that? How do you get there?" They could see it. And that's what lured them on. So when people see your happiness and your peace, they can't argue with that. Like, "Well, I don't believe this." Yeah, well, but when they look at you, what's there not to believe? How can they argue with it? So I think that's extremely important, to see the change in your life, how you're more peaceful and happier and so forth. And convinced. I have friends that they know I'm better off, but they're just not ready for it. And so that's also there. You know, we're evolving through different lives. And so some people aren't ready yet, you know. I was ready when I was 19, 18, 19. I was completely ready. I have friends that were ready when they were 14. They were teaching themselves Hindi and reading Vedas in Hindi. Can you imagine that? You know, that means they were Indians in their last life. They're already doing it. They're just, you know, by the time they were 14, they remembered, "Oh yeah, this is what I was doing in my last life." This friend of mine, so he studies Hindi, and then he gets all these books in Hindi, and he learns Indian music and all the ragas. You know, it was like 15, he's playing ragas, you know. Or 15, you're supposed to play, you know, like guitar. You know. And he's playing sitar and tabla. So a lot of people are just evolving, and other people are evolving now in this life, and so you know, you can be an example. You can encourage them to chant and study philosophy and spiritual knowledge, and then just detach. You do what you can do, and then detach, and see what happens. You know, like my sister, you know, she understands what I'm doing somewhat. She appreciates it, but I never really adopted it. So maybe next life, maybe later in life, you don't know. When I was 19, I went in a bookstore, and I was just walking around, and I pulled a book off the shelf. You know, there's a lot of books in a bookstore, right? And just like, I think we're gonna have to make a movie. I was like a zombie. I went in the bookstore, you know, play the eerie music, you know. And then I touch a book, and it's Bhagavad Gita. I didn't even know what it was. But I was so inquisitive at that stage in my life to understand my existence, where I've come from, why I'm here, where I'm going, what's the whole reason to be here, why do I have to die, you know, die in 50, 60 years, like why, what is all that all about? That was just like on my mind 24/7. And so I'm in a bookstore, obviously, divine arrangement, my hand falls on Bhagavad Gita. That's the book I need, you know. I didn't need other books on how to progress materially, because I was ready. But if I wasn't ready and my hand fell on that book, I would just put it back. So sometimes people aren't ready. But, you know, we encourage them to chant, read, study, read the Bhagavad Gita, see what you think. And that helps them get ready. And, you know, I did this when I was young. Well, there's many people who don't start doing this till they're 50, 60, 70, isn't it? They weren't ready when they were younger, or they weren't in a place where they were introduced to it. So they want to be ready in the right time. But as long as you're a good example, at least when they're ready, you'll be there. Yeah. They should read my books. My third book is coming out March 26th. Well, you can get my other one, Uplift Yourself, Change the World. You just Google that on Amazon, Kindle. You'll like it. I think you'll benefit from it. I benefited from it. I read my own books. I forget what I said. See, actually, there's a lot of spiritual knowledge that gets channeled through us. We're in the right consciousness, it comes. And then we forget. So, if you're writing books in that consciousness, you can read your own books. Because you go back and say, I don't think I wrote all these things. It's interesting how it works. So, is that okay? Is that more than okay? Super okay? So we can chant some more? Do you know that chanting causes it to rain? Did you know that? Did you know that? It's true. Causes it to rain. So, we'll chant another mellow melody. This was a melody that was revealed to me by accident when I was doing Kirtan in China. And it kind of conveys the mood that we are in this world. We are souls in this world, separated from our Creator. We turned our back, and now we're trying to turn towards Him. That's the meaning of the mantra. Like, the philosophy is, we're here, divine is here, but at some point in history we went this way instead of this way. So, you know what it's like going this way, lust, anger, greed, all these things pull us away. So chanting is kind of like a rocket counteracting gravity. The chanting is pulling us up. So maybe this melody will inspire you in that mood to pull yourself up. Oh, you want the chorus? No. We could do that one, we did it last night. So let's do this. I'm not sure how many times you repeat. Let me hold on a second. The first one is 3 times. Repeat 3 times. I have many bands around the world, and I all name them the band that never played before. Because this always happens. When I go somewhere new, I don't travel with a band. So we put the band together. So I have to teach them the song. And if you want to dance, dancing is wonderful. Sit down and I'll sing you a song. Okay? Before I have to, whatever. 500 years ago, approximately, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to India and to bring this chanting. He didn't write anything. He instructed disciples to teach, but he left 8 verses about chanting. And one of the verses is a very esoteric aspect of spiritual life. When the devotee is separated from his beloved Lord and he's feeling intense pain, but that pain is blissful. Because when you're separated from someone, you think about them more. Right? So when you're thinking about the spiritual, you're thinking about God, God is blissful. So even though you're in pain, you're blissful. So I'll sing you one verse.